This show was recorded live on Tuesday, April 8th at 12 p.m. Pacific Time. Tune in, join the live chat, and call in during the show by going to adamversustheman.com/live. I have brought a distinct perspective to how Americans look at the United States judicial system. The legal system, excuse me, silly statist Adam here using government terms to describe their propaganda. No, think about this for a second. If you understand the government to be the racket that it is, do you really think that the courts are there to provide for the rule of law, to provide accountability, to keep the executive branch in check? Or that there's some real effective balance of powers going on here at the United States federal government? Hell no. The Supreme Court and all of its subsidiaries, all of the courts in the country are there to reinforce the racket. Now, to understand this, you kind of have to understand the history, the creation of the federal government from the Articles of Confederation to the United States Constitution. Under the Articles of Confederation, this country was not exactly the same kind of national entity that it was under the Constitution. The people who were advocating for the Constitution, the Federalists, who wanted a stronger central power, who wanted greater authority to be invested in the federal government, they had to convince people to accept this, who were wary of the king and all abusive powers and all tyrannies at the end of the Revolutionary War. And they said, oh, well, we'll put the Bill of Rights in there. And, well, you can tell me how that's working for you now. Do you think you have freedom of speech? You think you have the right to defend yourself how you see fit and bear arms as allegedly protected by the Second Amendment? How about even the less disputed Fourth Amendment right to privacy? Yeah. Welcome to the 21st century, America. Not anymore. Although you could say that respect for such rights never really existed, because from the beginning it was a shell game. It was to get you to accept that you needed a stronger central authority, that you needed this greater power. And what they told you, the great propaganda behind the Constitution, was, oh, I know, we can have strong central authority as long as we have a court to be the supreme law of the land and the interpreter of the Constitution with the Supreme Court. And they'll tell you whether something's constitutional or not. And if the executive oversteps its bounds or Congress passes a law that's unconstitutional, they'll be right there to say, no, that's unconstitutional. You can't do that. And who appoints these judges? Oh, yeah, the president. So do you really think that the United States legal system, it's not a judicial system, it's really more of a propaganda system than anything, you really think it's there to protect you? You think if a cop shoots somebody out of carelessness, you think the legal system in the United States is there to provide some kind of accountability? Well, we see this today from the Washington Post. Judge dismisses lawsuit over drone strikes in Yemen that killed American Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, we could debate, hypothetically, Anwar al-Awlaki. Although it is important to point out that whatever the federal government has said about him, the only thing he is guilty of is speech crimes. That's it. He didn't bomb anybody. He didn't shoot anybody. He didn't move any goods that we know of to supply materials or anything like that. But he helped orchestrate or inspire some attacks on the United States something. No, just on the United States. And if you're some poor sheeple who identifies as part of the United States and can't figure out that there's a difference between the people and the nation and the government, well, you might just sort of fall for this fear-based propaganda. A federal judge on Friday dismissed a lawsuit against Obama administration officials for the 2011 drone strike killings in Yemen of 3 U.S. citizens, including an al-Qaeda cleric. So, yeah, he was affiliated with al-Qaeda. Fine. You know what they did next? After killing him? His 16-year-old son. Now, okay, let's say let's give him. Let's accept. Oh, Anwar al-Awlaki is a bad guy, deserves to die by whatever fair free market standards you want to apply. Even without government, we'd hire someone to kill him because he was a bad guy. Okay, fine. And there's some market accountability for that. There's some way to address how you go after threats that's based on what's a real threat. And you know what? If we actually were able to escape the protection racket of government, you could tell that our resources for defense would and for safety would really be concentrated on things that are real threats, not the relatively insignificant threat of terrorism that is created by government. Anyway, but his 16-year-old son? Really? Now, let's give the government their point that there is some reason for this. That there is some justification for this. That there was some legitimacy to murdering a 16-year-old boy. Okay, fine. When the executive branch does that, according to the propaganda, it's supposed to be subject to judicial review. U.S. District Judge Rosemary Collier said the case raises serious constitutional issues and is not easy to answer, but that, quote, on these facts and under this circuit's precedent, the court will grant the Obama administration's request. Oh, surprise, surprise. The suit was against then Defense Secretary Leon Panetta, then CIA Director David Petraeus, and two commanders in the military's Special Operations Forces, permitting a lawsuit against individual officials, quote, under the circumstances of this case would impermissibly draw the court, quote, into the heart of executive and military planning and deliberation. Yeah, that's the point of judicial oversight. Hello. She said the suit would require the court to examine national security policy and the military chain of command, as well as operational combat decisions regarding the designation of targets and how best to counter threats to the United States. No, not really. Just this one case. Was it justified? Now, there were oral arguments last July. The judge challenged the Obama administration, repeatedly, pointedly asking, and this is great. You see now the Washington Post is getting in on the propaganda game, because even if this case had been properly heard, what would have been the purpose? Why would the court go, because it was the grandfather. We killed your grandson. Yeah. Well, let's give you some due process here. Let's make sure we hear this one out and determine whether or not it was justified, or whether we need to pay some money and fess up and apologize that we murdered an innocent person. What do you think the outcome of that would have been? Oh, we're going to have this long parade of propaganda saying, "Oh, no, we really scrutinized this one hard, and we asked all the hard questions of government, and at the end of all of that, we found out, oh yes, it was totally justified killing this 16-year-old." So that's this, but they don't even go to that extent anymore. The American people are so detached from the crimes of this government now. The propaganda is just, oh yeah, we consider that. We had a hearing, and the judge asked the government some hard questions, and then did what the government, who pays her salary and appointed her to her job, she just did what they asked them to do. Where was the due process in this case for the now dead U.S. citizens targeted in the drone attacks, when an administration lawyer said there were checks in place, including reviews done by the executive branch? Collier said, no. And there's a quote here in the Washington Post, 5 no's. No. And declared that, quote, the executive is not an effective check on the executive when it comes to protecting constitutional rights. Well, guess what? Neither is your court. But in Friday's ruling, it was clear that the administration's arguments had a strong impact on the judge, who was appointed by President George W. Bush. And of course, yeah, it doesn't matter who the front man of this operation is. It's all the same game. The government argued that the issue is best left to Congress and the executive branch, not judges, and that courts have recognized that the defense of the nation should be left to those political branches. Yeah. Oh, so if the courts say, oh yes, if it's national defense, we don't have oversight of that. Yeah, that's untouchable. When the government does something, but it's in the category of national defense, we're not going to exercise any oversight. Well, guess what? When the American people buy that line, all of a sudden, well, every everything the executive branch does is in the national defense. I mean, if we don't have Obamacare, we won't have healthy soldiers to go and kill not quite terrorists and make more enemies for America. Yeah, really, you think that this is the oversight that we were promised? You just got to think about how it actually works. Because when you give it up, when you give up this idea, and you say, okay, government, we're going to question everything you do. You're taking money from us in taxes. We at least expect you're going to protect our rights. You're going to use it to defend the nation. But anything, anything other than that, we're gonna really scrutinize. But if you just say, it's for the national defense, we'll just ignore it. We don't need any oversight over that from Congress or from the courts. No, go ahead. It's for the national defense. Anwar al-Awlaki's classification as a key leader raises fundamental questions regarding the conduct of armed conflict, Collier's 41-page opinion stated. At least we got that. We got 41 pages of propaganda. The Constitution commits decision-making in this area to the President as Commander-in-Chief and to the Congress. Do you see what our judicial, legal system has become? And if you think that it's at all relevant in how it comes to the actual legitimate services of dispute resolution that are provided for by the court system, it's an afterthought. The purpose of the courts is to get the American people to accept a criminal government. If they occasionally put dangerous people behind bars or punish people for real crimes, well, then that's just a side bonus for us. But most of what it's used for is punishing people for non-crimes, for dealing drugs, for using drugs, supplying, unapproved drugs. Because, legal drugs like caffeine and nicotine and alcohol and all the pharmaceuticals, those are fine because lobbyists for those organizations have appropriately paid off the right parts of government. The lawsuit was filed by Nasser al-Awlaki, Anwar's father and the teen's grandfather, and by Samir Khan's mother. Allowing a lawsuit against the individual officials, quote, would hinder their ability in the future to act decisively and without hesitation in defense of U.S. interests, Collier said. The fact is that Anwar al-Awlaki was an active and exceedingly dangerous enemy of the United States, irrespective of his distance, location, and citizenship, as evidenced by his participation in the Christmas Day attack. You remember the Christmas Day attack? Yeah, me neither. Anwar al-Awlaki was able to persuade, direct, and wage war against the United States from his location in Yemen without being present on an official battlefield or in a hot war zone. She said that the U.S. government moved against al-Awlaki as authorized by the defendants, and she said the officials acted in accordance with the authorization for use of military force, which was enacted by Congress after the attacks of September 11, 2001, which has never been properly subjected to judicial review. So you would hope that, when a government official kills a United States citizen, a 16-year-old child, that there would be some accountability for that. But no, the judge, hired by the government to be a very effective propagandist, has said, no, we cannot hinder their ability in the future to act decisively and without hesitation. Well, when the government is killing U.S. citizens who are completely innocent, we certainly need to do something to introduce a little hesitation into their thought process. And today is Tuesday, April 8th, 2014. Thank you so much for joining us on the Adam vs. the Man podcast. We are live at adamvstheman.com/live, and we have an awesome show for you today. We got Wayne Matson coming on at 1 o'clock. We have Brandy Vale, who is an expert on alternative currencies, coming on at 1:30. And since our guests are late today, we're going to be taking calls on Skype earlier. So go ahead and get your chats in. Don't send me contact requests. We just added that to the description on the live page. Just just send me a chat. I don't need your contact information to get a hold of you. If you send me a chat, and that's all I'm going to be looking at anyway. So it's awesome being here in Los Angeles, although it's getting a little warm in the studio. I don't know if you noticed. It wasn't just the technical difficulties that had us sweating yesterday, but we've got them all worked out. We're going to have some fun with this. And remember, please support the show. We are still looking for sponsors if anybody's interested in being able to reach out to the Adam vs. the Man audience. But if you'd like to donate, please go to adamversustheman.com/invest. We take Bitcoin and Litecoin. We're going to be getting into those later as well. But as always, send your love mail to adam@adamversustheman.com. All right, I guess we're going to start today, or for our next story, we're going to get into something of a little bit more practical information. Do you think anybody in the Adam vs. the Man audience has ever sent or received drugs through the mail? Anybody? Bueller? I see people in the room here just looking away nervously. But no, it's okay. It's okay. This is I've actually been wondering about this, and we found today on U.S. News, marijuana stuffed mail intercepts hit another high, postal inspectors say. Sometimes I wonder if the absurd, silly games, word games and stuff played by mainstream journalists are intentional or not. Because in all the universities where they teach journalism, which is giving credibility to propaganda, objective journalism, there's no such thing as objective journalism. Whenever you're presenting information, you're already saying, this is the most important thing I could be telling you right now. So, the mail intercepts hit another high. Get it? More. All right, anyway. The U.S. Postal Inspection Service ended fiscal year 2013 on a high. Maybe it was deliberate. Intercepting 20% more pot-packed parcels and tallying 14% more arrests and indictments for mailing controlled substances than in the preceding year. During the fiscal year, which ended in September, inspectors confiscated 45,000 pounds of cannabis concealed within 9,100 parcels, according to Paul Kren, an assistant inspector in charge at the U.S. Postal Inspection Service's Washington, D.C. headquarters. In fiscal year 2012, inspectors found 42,000 pounds of marijuana stashed in about 7,600 parcels. So here are the, obviously pot's the most common. You might think it would be higher, right? It's only 68% of seizures are marijuana. That means 32% of Americans sending drugs through the mail are probably having more fun than you right now. So postal inspectors, often in cooperation with local and other national law enforcement agencies, secured 2,622 arrests and indictments for mailing controlled substances, up from 2,299 the preceding year. So we've seen just from 2012 to 2013 about a 20% increase in marijuana parcel intercepts, 7% increase in pounds seized. So I guess people are getting a little more, they're distributing it a little bit better. We're figuring out, we do smaller packages, then maybe they're a little less suspicious. Because I imagine that this is only increased even more than what these government numbers would suggest. All drug and drug-related parcel seizures are up 18%. Arrests and indictments. Now this is much smaller. Now this is here comes the really practical information. Okay. Arrests were up 14%, but more importantly, there were 9,100 parcel intercepts in 2013. There were only 2,622 arrests. That means that less than a third of the people doing this and getting caught by the mail system actually end up getting arrested. Yeah, it's pretty safe. The inspectors recently began tabulating arrests and indictments together. In previous years, only arrests were recorded in year-end reports. The number of arrests was 33% higher than the preceding year, up 200% from 2006. So, it's unclear, according to the story, if the increase in intercepts reflects an increase in shipments or merely better detection methods. In addition to more traditional drug dealers, the Silk Road online drug marketplace. Has anybody in the Adam vs. the Man audience, you think they've ever heard of the Silk Road? You think? No? Bitcoin, drugs, mail, yeah, perfect combination, right? Became a household name last year with sellers using the mail system to deliver internet-placed orders. Silk Road was taken offline after more than 100,000 satisfied customers bought drugs. And this really gets to the heart of the story, does it not? I hate to, it's been, as I've been reading this story, using these words of the drug war, of statism, of enforcement, it's not theft. It's a seizure. We seized it like it was there and it was unclaimed and we grabbed it. Like, seize the day. Yeah, it's a good thing we're stealing your mail. Now, there was a Senate Appropriations Committee hearing featuring Senator Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Now, she complained that there's rampant drug abuse in some of her state's most remote communities, where the only way to get illegal drugs is through the mail. Yeah, imagine that. Thanks to the internet and the United States Postal Service, Eskimos are getting higher than ever before. It's an amazing technological innovation. But instead of looking out for her satisfied customers, instead of protecting their property or looking out for their rights, what does Senator Murkowski say? Through the post office? An astonished Senator Mikulski asked. This is from Maryland, the other senator. Through the U.S., okay, so this is, again, back to Murkowski. Through the U.S. Post Office? Murkowski fumed, saying heroin and synthetic substances were flowing to isolated towns. We need to get on it yesterday. Yeah, the theft is not happening fast enough. There were sparks flying on Capitol Hill in another hearing yesterday featuring Eric Holder and Texas Republican Representative Louis Gov't. Now, Gov't is one of your Tea Party type conservatives, was really big on the Fast and Furious scandal, and kind of got to give a little background here, because Fast and Furious was the American U.S. federal government's drug running operation being conducted through the Department of Justice, where they were sending guns into Mexico in order to catch people moving guns illegally by helping them move guns illegally. And so, it's really, just to put this in perspective, more people have died in Mexico as a result of the drug war in the last year than troops have died, U.S. troops have died in the entire global war on terror. It is insane. When I was in Fallujah in combat, I got medals for this shit. I was being shot at by terrorists, insurgents in Fallujah in 2004. It was the first battle. And Juarez is more dangerous for U.S. service members than Fallujah was in 2004, even with the bigger battle. There are more people dying every day as a result of this. And the government funds and fuels all of it. Because if there weren't people doing drugs that other people didn't like them doing, the whole racket would fall apart. Gun control. If people don't, it's not enough that people own guns legally under the Constitution. They have to actually give guns to criminals, so that gun control is, something we really have to get behind. But here they got caught finally, and this reminds me of, when we interviewed Freeway Ricky Ross about the crack epidemic in the 80s and how he taught, how he exposed, after getting caught and going to jail, how the CIA was helping move crack cocaine into the inner cities. And they only got caught with it decades later, and you found out, oh, the government was really behind that. And you wonder, when are people going to learn? When are people going to figure out that all of these horrific things that are happening in society that are kind of contrary to human nature, except for, when we give people the power of government without accountability? Yeah, you're going to find out decades later. But for once, they got caught almost in the act, because one of the guns that was used for Fast and Furious was used then in an incident. This is you think about this. If you understand just tactical scenarios at all, a few hundred, maybe a few thousand guns, who knows how many now, go into Mexico because the U.S. government is sending them there. And one of them ends up getting used by somebody who was coming across the border, and a border patrol agent was stopping them and got killed and shot with a gun supplied by the United States federal government in a way that that gun was recovered and then traced back. What are the odds of that? I mean, just all of those things coming together, and the serial number on the gun, and instead of being buried, I mean, do you really think now? Border Patrol agents going, one of our guys got shot. We're gonna treat this as a crime scene, and we're gonna get the serial number from the gun. At least we're gonna record that. And before the Justice Department could come in and say, "Hey, you guys, you didn't find that gun there," because they've covered up shit that's a lot harder to cover up than that. It gets out, and people go, "Holy crap." The American government is supplying guns to criminals that are being used to kill government agents that we think are protecting us from criminals coming over the border. But instead of untangling that whole knot and going, well, geez, maybe if we just stop turning to government for protection, people were outraged, Republicans especially, because it was Attorney General Eric Holder. It was a big thing for the Obama administration, and touched on a lot of key points and hit a lot of hot buttons for their base to say, immigration and guns and drugs and so on and so forth. So Louis Gohmert is at this hearing yesterday with Attorney General Eric Holder, and he's laying some groundwork for a question that he's going to ask. And he says, quote, "I realize that contempt is not a big deal to our Attorney General, but it is important that we have proper oversight." And what he's referencing here is the fact that the House of Representatives had subpoenaed documents about the Fast and Furious scandal, and the Justice Department, Attorney General Holder, refused to supply all of them, and the House voted to hold him in contempt for not supplying, the appropriate information. So I mean, just to recap what happened here. I mean, you hear a story like this, and you're like, wait a second, and these people are still in office, and the American government still exists, and the people still believe that it's necessary and good for their safety, really? Because this happened, and then our mechanism of accountability, the will of the people in Washington, D.C., the House of Representatives said, gee, government, Attorney General Holder, you got somebody killed here because you were running guns to drug dealers in Mexico. We know what happened. Can you explain? Can you give us can you give us these details? I mean, we know there's these. Can you give us those documents? And they go, nah, we can't hear you. Like, that was that was it. That was what Attorney General Holder's response was to this request for accountability. And yeah, he's still in office. Anyway, so what does Attorney General Holder say now when Gohmert calls him out for this? You don't want to go there, buddy. You don't want to go there, okay? Really? Now, this is like at a whole other level of suppression of I don't even know what, because it's so convoluted in what this all represents. But if Representative Gohmert, as a member of the United States House of Representatives, as a representative of the American people, the people in his district, goes, well, gee, I want to talk about this, Mr. Attorney General. And he says, no, don't talk about that. I don't want to go there? No. About the contempt? Here's Attorney General Holder. Quote, you should not assume that it is not a big deal to me. I think that it was inappropriate. I think it was unjust. But never think that it was not a big deal to me. Don't ever think that. Okay. So we challenge the Congress, challenges his credibility. And yes, he thinks that's a big deal, but not the incident of, running drugs to dealers in Mexico, or running guns to drug dealers in Mexico and getting a Border Patrol agent killed. That part, not a big deal. Gohmert reiterated that the Justice Department has still not produced the documents by saying, quote, I'm just looking for evidence, and normally we're known by our fruits, and there's been no indications that it was a big deal because your department still has not been forthcoming in producing the documents that were the subject of the contempt. Well, Mr. Gohmert, the biblical reference is appreciated, but allow me to turn the spotlight back on yourself for just a minute here, if I may. Let you be known by your fruits. And I want to commend you, sir, for for challenging Attorney General Eric Holder in this one moment yesterday that you took the time to put him on the spot. But were you representing your constituents? Were you serving the American people? Or were you merely giving them false hope as to the relevancy of your job and your position in order to keep collecting your paycheck and keep going about as a self-important congressman, a leader of the people? Think about that for a second. Because if we should know you by your fruits, you have yet to produce any accountability or change in policy. But if you understood that that was impossible, through your position, you would no longer be a U.S. congressman. All right, so we're going to turn to Skype now. Jeffrey, you want to get us to camera 2 or shot 3? What are we doing now? I think we've got some people here on Skype that want to call in. So, Jacob Kelly, and actually he contacted us yesterday. He is organizing a smoke down prohibition event. So let's get Jacob Kelly on the line here. We got a couple more fun stories we're going to get to today, if we have time. The gender gap in pay at the White House, yeah, fun hypocrisy there. But got some interesting perspective and a fun story from the Wall Street Journal to combine that with, as well as the high school student arrested for telling his principal that he was disappointed in him. All right.
Yo, what's up?
Mr. Kelly, welcome to the show. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good. How are you, man?
Outstanding. I think people can hear you on the live stream. Can people hear him on the live stream? Do we have any way of knowing?
Try to get in some better. I should turn the light on. Wait a second.
Oh, all right. Well, your shot looks great,
Okay.
but not anymore.
Okay, here I am. I don't know if that helped or not.
All right. So today, to make up for what's that?
Before anything, could I give a shout out to Jeff? He's fucking awesome. I met him last year at the beach party, and that was the best event. I hope that beach party is event this year in August. I'll definitely come out for that.
Awesome. Where do you live?
I live in Ohio, Youngstown, Ohio. Yeah.
So you're just looking for any excuse to come to California?
Basically, yes, because California is awesome, and also, man, I applied at your email for an internship job, but I never got an answer. But if you still need somebody, I can be there in after my semester ends in a month. I could be there for the whole summer if you need somebody.
We need people here, and absolutely, I'm really excited about that actually, because I know we've corresponded in the past. I'm sorry we missed that email, but if you'd like to talk about when you can come out here, then I'd really be excited about getting you plugged in. So, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Tell us about the smoke down event you're organizing.
Okay. Well, yeah. Let's get to the chase. Well, I went to Ohio Youngstown Normal meeting on Saturday, and there's 16 people there, and I just raised the idea of having a smoke down, and everybody was totally for it. It was everybody was like, yeah, that's a great event, a great idea. So I just contacted NAPO on Facebook on if there's some kind of a way to organize it successfully, and so he gave me all the information. So on April 20th, Stoner's Day at 3:30 in Wick Park, which is one of the main parks here in the city of Youngstown, we're gonna have a smoke down prohibition, and it's gonna be very much similar to the Philadelphia one, because that's shown a lot of success and a lot of people responded well to that kind of format. So we're gonna have speakers starting at 3:30, and we're looking to get some artists, some local talent, and to play on the guitar or something. And we're also gonna have, for non-smokers, we're gonna have an illegal lemonade stand, because without permits, those lemonade stands are illegal in fact. And
love it.
So we'll have that for non-smokers. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
And then at 4:20, we're gonna have the cannabis reflection time, and we're gonna blaze up Youngstown.
All right, but
it should be really fun. We have about 50 people that have said that they're gonna come, but as you know, Facebook, that kind of only a certain amount show up, but 50 potential show-uppies. And there's a Facebook event. You can find it under Youngstown Normal. They shared the event, and it's gonna be an awesome, fun time.
No, this is huge, and I hope if you'll indulge me, I'd like to try to put this in context and see if you're appreciating the significance of this the same way. But first, I'd like to ask you, well, what is the status of marijuana laws in Ohio?
Well, it's completely against the law. It's like my friend got caught with it in the dorms, and he had 0.7 on him, and he got a felony and $150 fine.
Holy crap.
Yeah, so I got kicked out of the dorms. I go to the university, and I got kicked out of dorms because I smelled like marijuana. I smoked before I came in without it. I smelled like it, and I went to this hearing. They kicked me out of dorms, so I'm in my apartment now.
Wow.
That's cool, though. But it's like Ohio is like I don't know the specifics, but Ohio is the worst state, one of the worst states regarding marijuana laws.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So you're gonna have people coming out and smoking in public and risking a felony charge for possession. Now, I do want to point out, if I may, just a little bit of advice. That and I was thinking about this when you mentioned for non-smokers, and that's really cool that you have a non-felony alternative, right, for this. But there are lots of ways to participate in this as a celebratory act of defiance. And if you're a non-smoker, you can pull a Bill Clinton and just not inhale. You can it is not an insignificant act of civil disobedience to be at an event like this and simply take a joint from someone and hold it for 2 seconds and pass it to another person. You are committing civil disobedience. You are participating in this. And at that point, your arrest risk is extremely low. But in Ohio, you're still risking a felony. So, it's good to know that people have an alternative. But for the significance of this, in terms of the beginning of the end of the drug war, I am really excited to hear that this event is happening. I am so honored that you're calling into my show to talk about this, and that I may have had some role in I hope inspiring this through my participation in the smoke downs in Philadelphia. And for people that don't know, this was started by N.A. Poe and Steve Miller of the Panic Hour. We have some great videos on the Anna vs. the Man YouTube channel from those events, and we have a moment of cannabis reflection at 420. And then, people who are, and this was a monthly thing in Philadelphia. They ended the park police there ended up escalating. This is now an ongoing confrontation. But for the first few months, people just showed up, and the first one, it was just a few dozen of us. We all smoked pot in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia, and no one got arrested. And then the next time there were like 100, and then the next time there were a few hundred, and it kept growing and growing. But then they cracked down, and then N.A. Poe and I ended up in sharing a solitary confinement cell in the special housing unit of the federal penitentiary in Philadelphia for a week. I completely escaped that, and that's a whole other story, and you can see the video for that on the channel. But N.A. Poe is still on probation as a result and not allowed to smoke. This is not an insignificant act of civil disobedience. This is not a small risk or sacrifice that people are taking, but it is so significant because what happened when California legalized medical marijuana so long ago, it was the first big hole that was blown in the war on drugs. And then you had Colorado, and you had Washington State, for recreational recently. You've had all the other states.
DC decriminalized.
Yes. You've had all the other states that are making progress on this issue, and yet you still have these, the dark parts of the continent here, where people are still locked in cages for smoking a plant that is coming to them through the mail from all these other places. And what you are doing with this, and I'm actually, particularly excited about this 420 coming up here in just about a week and a half. Next, not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday, April 20th. Where we are right now in the beginning of the end of the drug war, if more people like you are doing what you are doing on that day, it will not be just the beginning of the end. We will have come to the next turning point, where even in states where people are threatened with felony charges for less than a gram possession, people are standing up and saying, you know what? Fuck the law, smoke it anyway, as Ed Fortune would say. We're not going to take it anymore. Jacob, this is amazing. Do you have a sense in putting this together of the historical significance?
Well, yeah, and I kind of grasp it that it is because the whole world is kind of changing. Uruguay just legalized it, and it's not just, this event is not just about Youngstown. It's about, like, one thing that sickens me the most, and this is the reason I'm doing it, is that there's moms out there that have 4-year-old daughters or kids that have seizures, and the best medication for that seizure is marijuana or marijuana oil, and there's some asshole in Washington that tells them that they cannot treat their child, and if they do treat their child, they get a felony charge and go to jail. And I don't want to live in a country like that. I don't want to live in a world like that where people are not allowed to treat their children with the best type of medication. And I'm just sick of it, because myself, I can sit in my room here and smoke as much marijuana I want, and I'll never, no cop will ever know, and I'll be fine. But I want to put my life, not my life, but I want to put my freedom out there online, because when I have children, and if for some, by some unfortunate reasons, my child has a disability like that, I want to be able to give it the proper medication, and it's just the fight for so people have the right to choose what they want to ingest in themselves, and just make it a better place.
Well, Mr. Kelly, I should inform you that whether you like it or not, whether intentional or not, living in America, engaging in any act of defiance or not, you are still putting your life on the line. But especially when you are confronting the police state, when it has the insignificant kind of accountability that it has in America today. And I mean, we just saw the Kelly Thomas verdict. You know, cops can kill a homeless man, just beat him to death with their fists, and nothing happens.
Well, that's because the sheeple, then you hear, I talk to people about it, and they're like, no, I love the police. When I'm at Dunkin' Donuts and there's a police officer behind me, I pay their bill and shit, and like everybody worships them. It's like they need to get out of this religion. It's a freaking religion, worshiping the state.
Absolutely, Jacob. I salute you and everybody who's going to be joining you on 420. I wish you the best of luck. And I you know, it would be interesting to see what happens, but I think the most important outcome, or the most positive outcome you can hope for, is that you have a critical mass of people there, and that the police stand down, and that you successfully create a freedom zone. And we saw this in Philadelphia, when they only really cracked down when the numbers were dwindling after they had gone up, but they threatened, and you know, they only went after when there were smaller groups. And I've seen this in you have a absolutely, they're bullies. When you have a critical mass of people standing with you, they can't touch you. But it starts with one person like you saying, I'm going to take a stand, and if I have to go down for this, I'm going to. And I hope that if that's the outcome, if you don't have that critical mass standing by your side, that you're able to effectively make the point that needs to be made here, and that you're able to utilize this as a way to reach people in Ohio and fight back against the evil aggressors in the drug war.
Yeah, and also I have just a quick message to other libertarians. A lot of libertarians are pissing me off because they're just like the people that are on the Facebook and just typing and typing. But then I go ask them about an event, and if they want to actually make a change, and they seem scared or uninterested. I basically have zero money. I live paycheck to paycheck, and I can organize this event. All you need is basically a little bag of weed and some papers and a Facebook account, and you can organize this event yourself. It's not hard. You can do it all by yourself. You don't need a great amount of money to do any of this. You can make a change right now in your city today.
Hell yeah, man. 420 is right around the corner. Get planning. Jacob, I just have one last question for you, because this is we've corresponded a couple times by email and on Facebook, but this is the first time hearing your voice. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Czech Republic.
My
dad married my wife. My mom. She's Czech, but my dad is American. So I was lucky enough to be allowed American citizenship, and I came here for high school, and I just loved the country. Mostly I loved it because of the people. because just all the people are friendly on a level and want to get to know you and want to have positive relationships, and I just love this country, and hopefully it doesn't go down the road, which it looks like it's gonna go, but that's mainly the reason I'm fighting for, because American people are awesome. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's goddamn. Goddamn, we need more activists like you. Do you have anything else that you want to share with our audience while you're on before we take another call, man?
Well, that was I had the main 3 points right there, and anything else? Well, I just think to point out, like, it's so easy to point out that the government is ridiculous. Like you said yesterday on the air, you had that with the time sharing in the cars, or like they're trying to ban that, when that's like actually something that goes along with their program of like environmental protection and stuff. But because it's that tax racket, then they're banning that. Or just the fact that people are being put in jail because they're collecting rainwater in Florida, or because they're drinking raw milk that isn't polluted with chemicals by the government. So I just think it's just time for each individual to just realize if they want to live in a controlled police state, or if they want to be free, and to just adjust for themselves what's better for themselves, what's going to profit them more personally.
Awesome, man. Well, I really hope this has inspired a lot more people to organize something like what you're organizing. So best of luck, and please check in with us again. If you want, we'll schedule this so we can make sure that we get you on Skype. But
okay,
next week, 420 is on Sunday. If you want to call in during the week, maybe Thursday, Friday, give us an update on what's going on, and maybe what other events around the country like this are happening. In places where it really is a daring act of civil disobedience. And then we'll definitely be looking forward to whatever videos come out of this, and having you on for a report afterward.
Okay, thank you very much for having me on the show. I love the show. I'm glad you're out of prison, man. Fuck them, and do you. All
right, brother. Yes. Take it easy.
Okay.
Jacob Kelly from Youngstown, Ohio. God, I'm excited. I almost said, like, I don't want to say I forgot that 420 was coming, because that would be irresponsible and forgetful of me. But there really are some exciting things going on. And this year is important. All right, Mitch Wiechik would like to talk about the Hayek-Rothbard debate. I'm not sure exactly what he's referring to, but we're going to see if we can get Mitch here on the line before we go to Wayne Madsen in just a few minutes. Mitch, are you there? Hello, Mitch? Nope. All right, we'll try that one more time. Jeffrey, did you check your text messages? All right. Well, let's see. Who else do we have here on chat while we're giving Mitch another try? Tej Trummer. Hey, watching you live, man. Cool stuff. Great. Not really helpful. All right, we got Mitch.
Is it working now?
Yeah, we got you, Mitch.
Okay, there we go. It's working.
Now, you have a beautiful A to the third power, some kind of symbol for your profile picture, but we can't see you. You got a webcam?
Yeah, the common ground symbol. I kind of did a tweak of that.
That's cool.
If you've been keeping up with Aaron Hawkins, the Storm Clouds Gathering here on YouTube too, he's been doing some pretty interesting stuff.
I do. I'm subscribed to his channel, but I haven't seen his recent stuff. So, but do you have a webcam? Can you give us video?
Yeah, the cam's currently plugged in. I don't know why it's not doing video. Here, 1 second. Oh, 1 second. Is it working?
No, but while you're doing that, or while you're working on that, why don't you explain what you mean by the Hayek-Rothbard debate?
All right, this is me, my friend and I. My friend's sort of, I'm just going to say where this debate has kind of began, and the cam apparently is deciding not to work. But
you mean your face is in a series of crazy colored vertical lines?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, interesting.
Yeah, but here, I'll just switch it back to this picture then.
All right, Mitch, go ahead.
Anyways, where do I start with this debate? Because it's pretty broad. On one end, you have more of the Rothbard people who are who are more think that F.A. Hayek was too light on the state, basically. But on the other end, you have people on Hayek's side who are either still laissez-faire capitalist for small government, but they're also but they also want like a minor security net there too.
All right, I can tell you exactly where I stand on this, and it's really pretty simple because this is just another manifestation of
This
the.
is only one part of the question.
Oh, okay. Well, what you've given me so far is really just one aspect of the sort of traditional minarchist versus anarchist libertarian debate. And it's really simple. If you're a libertarian, you believe in freedom. And if you understand what freedom is, then government, as properly defined, cannot exist in a free society. It is inherently a violation of freedom by its very existence as an entity based on coercion. And if you want to be consistent as a libertarian, I really think this concept of minarchism has been a poison in the libertarian movement. Because when you say, hey, I'm a libertarian, I believe in liberty, and I believe in self-ownership, and I believe in the non-aggression principle, and I believe that society can organize itself peacefully and non-coercively without some violent monopoly called government, then you have ground to stand on. You have a consistent position. You are logical, and your individual positions will not contradict each other. But when you're a minarchist and you say, well, I only want government to do X, Y, and Z. And to be fair to minarchists, they're not just grabbing random things that government has done and said, well, we want it to do that and to do that because it's been doing that reasonably well, or I feel safe with it doing that, so let's let it keep doing that. They are grabbing things, although they're colored by all of that, based on how they relate to the use of force that is kind of at the core of government, dispute resolution or national defense. But all of these things still are subject to the exact same fundamental principles as any other function of government, and are worse when done by government when they are legitimate services. And what is far worse is when they are not legitimate services and simply completely destructive. Well, you end up with, even if we have the minarchist dream, we're going to have, the potential for, I suppose, what you would see as a result of the American experiment.
Well, in a way, I think you have to have minarchism first before you have anarchism. It's kind of like going down the stairs if you think about it.
No, hold on. I will say yes and no to that because it's sort of like, the language that you use there is to someone who understands it the way that I do, at least, it's really frustrating because you're saying like we're going to walk before we run. That's like saying, okay, but if government is theft and violence and coercion, that's like saying, all right, we're going to stop murdering 10 people a day and we're only going to murder one person per day for a while. You really have to cut back before you go cold turkey. Do you see the problem there?
Anarchists I meet are mostly more, how would you say, more pro-localization.
Yes.
Right?
No. So here's the yes to my answer. The yes to what you said is, yes, we need to have minarchism before anarchism in the sense that we are dealing with the momentum and the institutions of this. And it's sort of like, if you're killing 10 people a day, you still gotta, hide the bodies from the day before you're able to, conclude a normal, healthy day of not murdering people. In the same way, yes, we can localize government. We have to take it apart one piece at a time, and there are people who are dependent on it, and we don't want to pull the rug out from underneath anybody. But that's not to say that we need to, or that it's the walking before you run metaphor does not apply here.
Understood. The second part of the question mostly pertains to the evolutionist and moralist side of the whole debate.
Okay.
If you know anything about that.
I'm not. Go ahead, hit it.
Well, the thing is, a lot of the Rothbardians they don't think that the Hayek's charts should have been that they're legitimate, basically.
Okay. Which charts specifically?
I'm trying to think of how to say this because I'm trying to think damn, what would my friends say about this? He's the one who convinced me to call in. Basically, So, like, in a sense, here's the way I look at it personally. I agree with the Rothbardians on the idea of free banking and the state being a violent entity.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think that Hayek and his guys were right when it came to the charts and their evolutionist ideas. Like the Rothbardians, they see like evolution in capitalism. They see that somewhat as the fringe of the movement. I talked with some people online about this actually on Reddit.
Well, explain evolution in capitalism. What do you mean by that?
Well, in a sense, looking at the market as a form of evolution. Like in the same way how evolution gets rid of the recessive traits.
Right.
Basically, the same way how evolution gets rid of the recessive traits, capitalism in a sense is the same way, where the market gets rid of the more bad things.
So, but here we're talking about evolution as a kind of metaphor to describe the process of market development. It's not exactly evolution in the strictest sense, right? So what's the disagreement then with what would the Hayekians say differently?
Well, no, that's what the Hayekians think. The Hayekians are more the evolutionists, and the Rothbardians are more the moralists in all of this. The moral ideals of liberty and everything.
Well, first to put this in context, it's kind of. Do we want to debate this, or do we want to reach out to a broader audience? And the liberty movement has this terrible tendency of arguing amongst ourselves as opposed to getting a broader message out. And I think a lot of libertarians fall into that trap and create these artificial conflicts. So if your idea of a transition is this and someone else's idea of a transition is this, but you agree on the core concepts of self-ownership and the non-aggression principle, then I don't think it really should be elevated into this kind of dramatic conflict. But it is an important subject to discuss, and I think if we talked about these issues from a different perspective, instead of saying like, well, what about the Hayekian Rothbard debate? Well, let's look at this let's stop looking at this from those sort of first of all, you're making kind of an appeal to authority anytime you present an issue as well, it's this guy versus this guy, as opposed to it's these are options, and it's instead of saying because Rothbard isn't alive today, are debating Hayek going, oh no, we should follow me and do it this way, and Hayek's going, oh, follow me and do it this way. They're both dead. And we are here dealing with the problems in front of us. And when we can, I think, just start from addressing these issues and from that perspective, we can have a much more productive conversation. So let me ask you, if you could rephrase the question, how do you stand on the debate? How would you say it?
For me, I think you pretty much just hit the bullseye on that one on the dartboard. I'm definitely, I love both of them. I like both of their works a lot. I'll admit I like Hayek a little bit more in a sense that I like his writings better, but I agree with a lot more of what Rothbard says. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, overall, either way, I personally love Konkin the best.
Yep.
Konkin, New Libertarian Manifesto, man, that beats both of them as far as
absolutely. Now, and this is, you want to get into, the esoterica of the history of ideas. It was really interesting to see Rothbard's rebuttal to Konkinism or to agorism, and going, wait a second, that's a load of crap. And it was the most irrational. It was I'm pretty sure it's the only thing I've ever read from Rothbard that I disagree with. And I'm just going to sum up with this, Mitch, if you don't mind, because we got a guest coming on in a minute. If Sam Konkin III didn't come up with the idea of agorism, but he coined the term, and it means committing civil disobedience as thoroughly as possible in your economic life under the radar in a way that allows you to live like the government doesn't exist. And to say, well, I'm not going to pay taxes on this because I don't have to. I can do my dealings covertly, or at least out of the eyes of the government. And then I'm not contributing to the violence of the state as much as I would be otherwise, right? So if that's the case, Rothbard's rebuttal was that that has no appeal to the average American, to the common man, to the laborer who's working a wage slave job and paying half of their salary in taxes. It's like, no. That's who it has the most appeal for. That's who it is most important for. And I think, again, this goes back to, the most important thing we can do as libertarians, which is show people how this philosophy improves their lives. And when it comes down to it, Rothbard's answer was political. Now, I'm not against political action by any means, but the actually disempowering government through agorism is capable of having a much more immediate and gratifying effect and makes people's lives better. If your answer is, well, be a libertarian, and then once every 4 years you can vote for the one most libertarian-ish leaning candidate for president, then you're really not helping people. But if you say, hey, guess what? When you're a libertarian and you understand what government is, it empowers you to live more free, to live in defiance in your daily life, to be richer and healthier and happier and more productive, well, heck, that's why I became a libertarian, right? That's what's valuable about it to me. So anyways, Mitch, thanks for the call. I really appreciate you raising these important issues and starting this conversation.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. I'll have to show that rebuttal to my friend, see what he has to say about that.
All right.
See if I can maybe get him to call into this.
Excellent. Well, yeah, please. And for those of you who are listening who have statist friends who you'd like to get to call in, I would love that. That would be amazing. Let's get those people to call in, and if you want, like, dare your friends to call into the show. We'll have a lot more fun with this. In fact, I think we're going to be doing a lot more calls in the future, because it's always so much fun. It's way more fun than like prepping for a show and Adam reads stories. We need to like minimize that. Just the top stories and more. More of your calls. All right. All right, Mr. Madsen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Good to be with you.
All right, Wayne Madsen is a well-known investigative journalist, author, and columnist specializing in intelligence and international affairs. He's the author of WayneMadsenReports.com. He's been traveling the world, investigating and reporting on stories that are usually not covered by the mainstream media. And really excited to have you on today, Mr. Madsen. Thank you so much for joining us. Given that introduction, what do you think right now is the most underreported or misunderstood international story in the American mainstream media?
Oh, by far, it's got to be what has happened in Ukraine. We, of course, we're shown these pictures, these videos of the Maidan Square demonstrations, and they painted a picture that the Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych was some sort of brutal dictator. His only crime was that he decided to scrap a very dodgy agreement with the European Union and chose to seek help for Ukraine, which was basically bankrupt from Russia, with which, of course, it's had a long relationship, association. Ukrainians and Russians, regardless of what we hear in the mainstream media, have a very close historical past. But we had this group of neo-fascists and World Bank types overthrow Yanukovych in what amounted to be a coup. Russia wanting to protect its own minority in Crimea, which was handed to Ukraine as a gift by Nikita Khrushchev in '54. Russia wanted to reset that clock, and they did. Basically took Crimea without anyone getting killed. It was pretty much a bloodless takeover because it was popular. But that's not the way it was reported by the media in the United States. Time and time again, we've seen the media reporting U.S. government propaganda and not what is really going on the ground in these countries.
Well, when you say he didn't commit a crime, other than rejecting this deal, I think it's a very interesting way of saying that, because obviously that was not a crime in and of itself by any stretch to not accept a deal on behalf of your country. But he, like I would say any politician in charge of any modern nation state, is a criminal because they're getting their income from stealing from the people. And a lot of the accusations against him were about cronyism and corruption and massive amounts of money, at least by Ukrainian standards, being moved into him and his family. Is there any credibility to that?
Well, we were treated to these photographs and pictures of his the home where he lived with all this what was said to be the wealth that he had amassed. I think the only thing he was guilty of was having some very bad taste and some very kitschy type artifacts. I mean, statues that were basically made out of plastic. I mean, yeah, he's guilty of bad taste, but whether, to paint him as some sort of like Mobutu in Africa, who, looted the country and had all the, this opulence. Well, I don't think there was a whole lot of money invested in what he had in that home. He did have a couple of cars, but you're right. I mean, with any of these leaders, of course, you've got the trappings of office, and I would say Yanukovych, though, of all of them, probably had the cheapest taste. Certainly nothing like Francois Hollande of France, who spent, I believe, several millions of dollars wining and dining the visiting Chinese president. They had so much food there, and and I guess even the foie gras made some people in his own government who don't like the way they make that with what they do to the geese, made them very uncomfortable. But certainly Yanukovych, he was more like an old Soviet era guy that enriched himself, because his tastes were, I would say, sort of pedestrian.
Okay, so I want to try to sum this up and see if this is accurate, if you could tell me that it is or not, or just expound on what you think the real narrative is here. But it seems like the false narrative that we've been getting from the American mainstream media is something along the lines of, there was an upset public because of corruption. They started to revolt. They basically overthrew the government through semi-political means, and then the Crimean region was taken over by the Russians because it has some ethnic, cultural, political, historical attachment, but it was a violent forced takeover and annexation of that. And now, we've got good guys that represent the people coming in the capital, and now the bad guy is Putin, coming in and taking Crimea away from Ukraine, when the real narrative behind this is more like there was some instability. There was a dictator who lost his grip a little bit and became a pawn between the European Union and the United States versus Russia. Is that a fair characterization?
Yeah, and also throw in the activities of George Soros, who was in there pumping money into these various non-governmental NGO organizations. Also, people like Victoria Nuland, who's we heard one of the conversation she had with the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. She's a rather potty mouth for a U.S. diplomat. She dropped the F-bomb a couple of times. She was supporting this World Bank Prime Minister, Yatsenyuk. She calls him Yats. And then we only found out through the Russian media that Yats has some association with the Church of Scientology. So, I mean, yeah, Yanukovych was sort of a Soviet era type leader, but he also wanted to maintain Ukraine's independence between the European Union, which wants to gobble up all these countries all the way eventually to the Urals, and maintaining Ukrainian sovereignty. I mean, Ukraine, many people in Ukraine go visit Greece, and they know what was going on down there, what's happened to that country. And they didn't want to turn into another Greece, but they will turn into another Greece, because it was just reported today that Yatsenyuk gave all these priceless icons and artifacts to the United States government as collateral for that $1 billion loan guarantee Obama arranged for them. So we've actually seen museums in Kiev looted as a result of this new government. Now, who was best for Ukraine? Yanukovych, who would have never let that happen, and this guy Yatsenyuk, who, some people claim he's a Scientologist who's allowed his nation's art museums and other museums to be looted by the United States.
All right, well, let's get to Crimea specifically and hone in on this, because this is how Putin has been raised as the big bad guy, and I don't have any doubts that Putin is a power player, that he's working to consolidate and grow his own power and the power of the Russian government, and he's going to do, whatever he can get away with to do that, just like, most people in government, period. And, I think it's exciting to see a kind of global shakeup in our psychological sense of sovereignty and nation states and what they are. And I'm kind of excited that, hey, there's a little shakeup, and guess what? People in one region, in one country can say, hey, guess what? We don't want to be part of this country anymore. We want to be part of a different country. And that happens. Now, I don't think it's legitimate in the sense that all governments are illegitimate, but if anything, that seems like a positive thing, that more people are having their will in terms of how they are governed respected. How legitimate is that takeover in that sense, if you accept the fact that governments themselves having control over various regions at all is appropriate?
Well, I think it was very legitimate, but Crimea was known as an autonomous republic or region in Ukraine anyway, because of its Russian majority. It was handed by Khrushchev, who was part Ukrainian, his wife was Ukrainian, as a gift. How could you take something that was Russian for hundreds of years and just give it to Ukraine as a gift? Well, that's because it was the Soviet Union. It was considered all one country at the time.
Well, hold on. First of all, I have to respond to I didn't know that part of the story, but how can you call a region full of thousands of people a gift? You own these people and you're just going to give them to another person like they're all slaves or cattle? I mean, just the language of the framework of this is so ridiculous. Yeah. But then within the framework, you're saying the transfer to Russia is legitimate.
It was amazing to hear people like John McCain decry Russia taking this back, when it was the leader of the Soviet Communist Party originally gave this region to Ukraine. So you have people like McCain basically defending the actions of a Soviet Communist Party General Secretary, Khrushchev, in '54. It's amazing that these people either don't read history or they're totally ignorant. They know it, but they rather not believe what they read. So there was a referendum in Crimea. It was over 97% of the people there voted in favor of what I call, it was retrocession, back to Russia.
Right.
It was an annexation.
Was that legitimate? Is that number pretty much legitimate? I mean, I understand you're never going to have a perfect number in something like that.
Yeah, no, it was very legitimate. As a matter of fact, I looked at other votes that countries had on referendum to declare their independence. Now, the U.S. State Department said, look, it's lopsided. It's obviously rigged. I looked at Norway's referendum when it declared independence from Sweden. It was 99%. Cambodia's referendum when it declared independence from France was 100%. But they're legitimate nation states now. So why was it good for them and not good for Crimea?
Well, it's that's also a great historical perspective to bring to this, because it shows that this kind of I want to say radical change of shifting sovereignties only happens when you have that overwhelming support. Until you have that critical mass, people are locked in to whatever racket they're subject to. Let me just ask one more question about how this is playing out on the world stage with Putin and Obama, and sort of the personality perceptions there. I know that might not be all that relevant because it's really more people pulling the strings, but it is very interesting nonetheless to see these two great propaganda puppets. And I guess I should ask too, compared to Obama, as we understand him as a puppet of American government special interests, how much is Putin legitimately an independent operator? Because he comes across not just as the tougher guy, as the more competent strongman leader, but also from my perspective, much more legitimately an independent actor as a power broker than Obama, who is much more a puppet. How does that public perception play into this larger narrative?
Yeah, we got to remember what Putin inherited. Putin took over from Boris Yeltsin, and Boris Yeltsin basically, under his watch, allowed the Soviet treasury to be looted by these oligarchs, and then the Russian treasury was looted by the same oligarchs. So Putin had to reestablish Russia's sovereignty economically and politically after the disaster called Boris Yeltsin. And he's trying to create a multipolar world. The U.S. has been going around for how many years now saying we're the world's only remaining superpower and New World Order and this all blah blah blah. Where Putin is talking about a Eurasian Union to be a competitor to the European Union that would take in the former Soviet republics in Central Asia, China, potentially India and Pakistan and other countries. And the bureaucrats in Brussels don't want to hear that. The European central bankers in Frankfurt don't want to hear that. So Putin is really, as you said, has really thrown a monkey wrench into these these globalism designs, and of course Obama is a player in that. I mean, he's a product. We look at, I at first thought, it's good that he's so internationally inclined after George W. Bush, who probably couldn't find most countries on a map. It was nice. I thought we had somebody, but now it's clear that what Obama is a product of that globalized world, the whole mom working for USAID in Indonesia and these international banks, and grandma working, running slush funds for the Bank of Hawaii for, CIA dictators all throughout East Asia, and his other alleged father, Barack Sr., being a international financier and economist from Harvard. He's a product of that. So, he's sort of the antithesis of Putin. Putin got his start, of course, as a KGB officer, was a colonel in the KGB, and Obama, although I think he had some significant ties, he certainly never got his hands dirty. I don't think, we know he never shed any blood in the military. The only thing he probably did was he has a couple of paper cuts from the time he worked for Business International Corporation in New York, which was a CIA front company after all.
It's amazing how really just a little bit of historical knowledge and perspective, although I know it comes from your vast body of work and everything, can really help to illuminate this particular situation. Before I let you go, I just want to ask you one sort of personal question here. You were a consultant in the 80s for the NSA, and I understand that back then it was a totally different animal, and I know that you've come a long way in your own if I may try to flatter you with this, in the moral consistency of what you do with yourself these days since then. But how did that influence you or affect your current understanding of the world and of what you're doing today? And how did that lead you to where you are now as a journalist?
Well, I was actually in the Navy back in the 80s. I was a lieutenant. I was at Naval Security Group activity, and I was reassigned to NSA in early 1980, the end of 84. It took a while for me to get my clearance all transferred from the Navy up to NSA. So I actually worked inside NSA as a military officer. And then when I left the Navy, I actually became a contractor for RCA, which was one of the big contractors for NSA, and still did that work for a few more years after that. And but it was a different NSA. I have to remember, I think back, and we did have the governing regulations that said you don't listen in on any American U.S. persons. There are procedures that if it happens accidentally, there were procedures that had to be taken, and everyone abided by that. I don't remember anyone, military or civilian, saying we need to have more surveillance power. Now, there were obviously plans to always an NSA to modernize, but even those plans took into consideration the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, something that the one of the recent NSA directors, General Michael Hayden, said he didn't think there was any probable cause in the Fourth Amendment for unreasonable, the unreasonable search and seizure unless there was probable cause. Of course, it says probable cause. So we had directors of NSA. Even when I was there, it was General William Odom, and none of these directors before him or after him would negotiate what the rules were, and that's all changed after 9/11 with General Hayden, and then with Alexander, and I don't know, this new Navy guy Rogers. It's probably going to be more of the same. NSA's become a huge threat, in my opinion, and because there are people, old timers. I met some of the old timers just the other day. Had dinner with them. We were talking about the good old days when NSA abided by the law, and those days are long gone, of course.
And from that seemingly innocent demon seed, we have seen grown what we have today. Wayne, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it.
Good to be with you, Adam.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wayne Madsen, WayneMadsenReports.com. Check it out. All right, we've got just enough time before we get Brandy on for a couple more Skype calls. If anybody wants to send me a chat here. See, we got Kate. No, Mike, Daniel. Do we not? We don't have, maybe we don't have as many people on the live shows today. Watching the live show for the first time. Oh, see, now we're looking at old ones. And Robert Kane. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Kane, welcome to the show.
Hey, yeah, here I am. I don't know, can you see me?
Yes, we can. Looking great.
Yeah, sure. How you doing today, Adam?
Excellent, excellent. People can hear you on the live stream, so one less technical difficulty every day.
Everything okay? All right, listen. Back on October 7th, I'm laying on my couch right behind me here. It's about 5:30 at night. I hear some noise out front. I go to my front window. I look out. I got two police cars on the striped line in front of the house. I got a police car on the adjacent house in the middle of the road. Next house on the other side also. They've got the intersection blocked off down the street. And up to the north, they got that intersection blocked off. So I hear, Robert Kane, come out of your house. So I go out to the front porch and I say, yeah, what's up? And they go, we want to talk to you. I said, do you have a warrant? He says, no. I says, well, come back when you got a warrant. I walk back in the house.
Well, how many officers altogether are we talking about here now?
All right. I'm looking at probably 6 or 8 AR-15s pointed at me from the street. I got a fence around the front of my property. The gates were locked.
Okay, so they're not just going to go away when you say, come back with a warrant. I don't feel like talking.
Well, if he's asking me, what are my rights under the Constitution, under the Fourth Amendment?
Okay.
Do you know what they are? I know you do.
Yeah. So you're asking the cop, and what does he say?
He says, we want to talk to you. I says, come back when you got a warrant. So I go back in the house. The phone rings immediately when I get in the house. It's the police. So the guy's talking to me on the phone. I knew him about 25, 30 years ago. I used to go out with his sister. He's saying, hey, Bobby,
nice.
Just go out there. They want to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. I said, listen, they don't have a warrant. I don't want to talk to them. I got nothing to say to them. I've been beat by the police before. I don't need to go through this shit. And he tells me, no, go. And he asked me about, we're talking.
Well, weren't you curious?
Says, do you remotely start your car in the backyard? And I didn't do that. So I walked through the house and I went out to the back door and I opened the back door porch and I got 4 SWAT guys pointing their AR-15s at me. I said, get the fuck off. Oops, excuse me. Off my property right now. Get the fuck out of here. You ain't got a warrant. Get out of here. And I closed the door, got the dog back in the house. So now I went back out in front. I says, hey, you want to talk to me? I took my shirt off. I says, hey, what do you got to say? Come up to the fence. He doesn't want to come up to the fence. So finally, they baited me, and this went on for about 35 minutes. I pulled my knife out of my pocket, and I put it back inside the house. And I walked down there, had pulled my pants down. I don't have any weapons. What do you want? So as soon as I got close to the fence, the guys that were in the backyard outflanked me, slammed my face into the fence, jacked my arms behind my back, tore my right rotator cuff, handcuffed me, threw me in the car, took my cell phone from me. They went into my house, took my dog out of the house and brought him to the pound without a warrant, went in the house, walked around, talked about in the report, this is the information from the police report. And in the police report, they're saying how, well, they noticed a green leafy substance over here. He's got rolls of duct tape there. There's a knife over there, sort of, whatever. So they arrest me, and they bring me to the police station. And get down there.
Did they tell you the charge? Did they tell you a charge?
With me, Adam?
Yeah, did they tell you a charge?
Yeah, well, they charged me with breach of peace, threatening, and resisting. On my own property, okay? So they set the bond at $15,000. I got a bondsman down there. The bondsman shows up. They told him over the phone that it was $15,000. They told me it was $15,000. When he gets there, they tell him, oh, wait a minute. Pulls his pen out of his pocket, adds another zero to it. He says it's $150,000.
Now, for most people, what state are you in?
I'm in Connecticut.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but in Connecticut, it's you can have a bondsman posted, and you pay the bondsman the going rate of 10%, right?
I think it's 7 now. I think they set it at 7.
Oh, it's set at 7. So the way this works is kind of a nice racket for the cops and the bondsmen, regardless of what happens, regardless of whether you're innocent, because you get brought in for a non-crime, whatever, in order to let you out within 24 hours, you have to have someone post a bond for $150,000. And in order to get them to do that, you have to give up that cash of 7%. And you pay that no matter what, and that money's gone.
Right, exactly. Now, what happens is he bonds me out anyways. They figured he wasn't going to take me out. So he gets me out anyways. They say, you can't go back to your house. I says, well, what do you mean I can't go back to my house? No, you can't go back to your house. This is about 2 o'clock in the morning. So they set the court date for that day. They were investigating some other alleged things that may have happened. Okay.
Well, your house is obviously a crime
I drove
scene.
Up here to my house,
your house was obviously a crime scene.
Parked in front, and then there was also another a cop parked in my driveway. So I couldn't get into my house. I couldn't change my clothes. I couldn't take a shower. My arm was hanging off here because they tore my rotator cuff. So I go to court that day, and they charged me with they obtained the search warrant at 12 o'clock on the 8th. And what they did was they came into my house and they said they found marijuana. They charged me with operating a drug factory, possession for sales, close to a school, whatever. They found I think a World War II rifle in the closet. I lived in a house that I bought that was my parents' house. I bought it from their estate. I even noticed the rifle was in there. So, they arrest me and they jack my bond up another $500,000, and then they bring me back to court the next day and they arrest me for charge me with kidnapping and assault. Some bullshit.
They charged you with kidnapping and assault? You couldn't charge them with kidnapping and assault?
No, they charged me with that.
Did you kidnap and assault yourself? Who is the alleged victim? Who is the alleged victim of this kidnapping?
I had given a couple of women a place to stay for a week, and they robbed my safe, and I kicked them out of here Sunday night, and I told them either bring my stuff back within 48 hours, otherwise I'm going to the police, because I don't like to call the police.
And so they went to the police first.
So they went and did what they did to each other, and went to the hospital, and then they called the police and said that I had done whatever to them.
Right.
So the police charged me with kidnapping. Now these women were living in my house, and I had to kick them out of here that Sunday night. So yeah, they locked me up. My bond was set at 1.65. Well, $1.5 million. I had posted the 150,000 the first night, and they sent me up to Northern Correction. Well, they sent me to Hartford first for a couple of weeks, and then up to Northern Correctional Center, their Supermax, in a 21-hour-a-day lockup in a 7x11 cell with another guy, 21 hours a day. Mm-hmm. And then I got to put up with the degradation and the humiliation of the police, the correctional officers every day. I said, listen, I haven't been convicted of a crime yet. What's going on here? You guys treat us like we're animals. And that's what they do up there. They treat you like you're an animal, give you slop, they feed you in your cell. Mm-hmm. They let you out of your cell for an hour and a half here, an hour and a half there. Yep. And then, we'll cut 10 minutes off there, do this, do that. They don't care about you up there. It's about 55 degrees in the cell. I spent 4 months up there. Finally, I was able to make bond. And now we got to fight the case from out here on the street.
So you're still facing all these charges?
Yes.
But you're back in your home at least?
Yes.
Oh,
I got a GPS bracelet on.
Oh, you're kidding. Let me see it. What are you wearing? Who are you wearing? Oh, the judicial system. Interesting. Yep, yeah, I've seen those before.
I gotta plug it in for 2 hours a day.
You have to plug it in? To charge it? I
gotta charge it.
Do they reimburse you for the electricity? No? Didn't think so.
I'm not sure about that. I haven't got to that point yet.
Well, it sounds like it sounds like you got swatted. You know the term getting swatted?
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I got swatted.
Yeah, it's when someone tries to get a SWAT team to your house. Well, you did get a SWAT team, at least in your backyard. So yeah, you definitely technically did get swatted. But people this is when you have a police system with no accountability, people can abuse it, and they can use it as a tool for violence against enemies. And we just lost Robert, but Robert, thanks so much for the story. And we are gonna go get Brandy Vale on here now. How's the live stream doing, guys? On day number 2, yeah? Everybody's picking up all the audio and everything else. All right. Let's see if Brandy's ready for us. As by the way, she wanted this forwarded. I don't know if she wanted it read on the air. I define finance. Excuse me. As she said, I define finance and liberation. Then I'll speak about me and my relationship to money and how I found myself in this line of work. She's been inspired by social engagements and has chosen a path to pioneer the next evolution in the social and shared economy. And Brandy, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Hey, it sounds like your mic is off, or you got some kind of delay there. Are you hearing me all right?
How about now?
Now I got you. All right, excellent. Brandy, thank you so much for joining us. All right, excellent. Brandy, thank you so much. All right, wait, hold on. Are you watching the live stream in another tab?
Hold on. Are you watching the live stream in another tab? Hold on 1 second.
I'm hearing the delay.
Yeah, gotta do my research.
Well, I hope you've been enjoying the live show.
We're good now.
There we go. Excellent. Brandy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Okay.
Now,
thanks for having me.
I'm before we get into any of the specific questions, I'm really interested in how you got to this line of work where you're going to say that you're going to come out with this bold statement. I define finance and liberation. Is that like a life mission? Like that's who I am. I am the definition of finance and liberation.
I would never go on record and say that. Good Lord. I can only imagine the phone calls that would come in if I said that. But I will say I am speaking on financial liberation coming up this weekend, something very important that has gravitated through so many different economies. And I think that's some of the conversation that we're having today, introducing these ideas on alternative versus complementary versus peer. There's so many different marketplaces that are happening, and I've kind of taken up the torch because I have a community of people who really are driven to have a higher level of exchange.
Well, how did you get into this line of work, and how would you describe it, that this form of activism?
My history is event production and working as a festival ambassador. And from going to the festivals, you can see some of the social currency that starts to develop, but there's been no tracking or no monitoring of it. It's just this camaraderie that happens and engagements that happen, and you see the power behind the mission. Are you familiar with Burning Man?
Absolutely.
Okay,
it's the next thing on my bucket list.
Okay, so you got to get out there. There's something called the gift economy that was somewhat established through this chain of camaraderie at Burning Man. Is that the social currency that they have established there is no exchange of money, an exception to the ticket that you purchase, and then once you're in the gates, there's no exchange of that money. When I went in 2010, I had a personal experience that really opened up my eyes about what civilization was, what it could be like, and really who I was as an individual. And then off of the playa, I had these experiences where these events that I was producing had such a large amount of people, but they were completely disconnected to how money was being exchanged. So I started going into that a little bit further, studying the peer economy, collaborative consumption, time banking, and alternative currencies like Bitcoin and Litecoin, and even Starbucks, credits. So, it's Starbucks coins, all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a lot of different exchanges happening today, but we're still not equating it to a change in currency. So you see all these people who are completely driven by what Bitcoin. Actually, there's a lot of people who don't even know what Bitcoin is, even with the media coming towards this type of alternative currency due to regulation. I mean, how many people do you speak to about Bitcoin and alternative currencies now?
Well, I mean, for the Adam versus the Man audience, I'd like to think everybody's pretty at least familiar with the concept. But I think you're right to point out that that it's a really interesting interaction or point that we've come to with awareness of cryptocurrency, where you have the media in pretty much a full-on attack. Anytime there's any bad news about Bitcoin, it's plastered in the headlines. Hey, everybody, learn about this new currency that's totally dangerous and unstable and unviable and subversive and is going to destroy the government, and don't do it. And it's like, well, telling kids not to do drugs, right? Or, don't put your hand in the fire. And yet still there's this that the reason they're doing it is because it has some effect. And it's sort of like right before mainstream adoption, we see this massive wave of resistance, and yet while awareness is growing, understanding is trailing behind it. But and one of the things I'd like to get your thoughts on in terms of cryptocurrency is that there's going to become a turning point where none of that negative propaganda matters, and it's just, well, is this a better viable currency that I can switch to by simply clicking over from my bank account, and bam, then the game over for the fiat racket, right?
It's digital currency, and point blank, it's digital currency, and so it's going to happen. I mean, if you can go back and say you're not going to use your credit card online, then fine. If you're going to say that Napster didn't occur, then fine. If you're going to say that some of these systems that we were never going to use, like the internet, fine, but that's not true, and we're evolving, and there's going to be a change of people stepping into their authority when it comes to how they trade and barter. And I'm all for complementary currency, because when you get into alternative currency, there's obviously a lot of regulation, a lot of governance, a lot of government policy that starts to have this black, dark shadow over it. When you look at the peer-to-peer networks that are being monitored right now for regulation, for the people, there's also a little bit of that gray area that starts to occur. So of course we're going to go through this growth phase, this pain growth, but it's happening. And so the more that we educate ourselves, and the more that we become flexible with using something different, even if it's your time. I'm a part of a couple of different time banks here locally in Los Angeles, and I've been studying time banks and how they work. So just like digital currency, we can exchange on a global marketplace, but we can also exchange our time, and that has a value to it. In fact, it has a ton of value to it. Not only is time equated to a value, it's being utilized right now by corporations, yet we're not getting paid in return for that. So a lot of what I'm researching and developing into a book right now is about how we use our social currency to create a monetary life for us. Right now, social influence and social impact online, as you know, like, do you Twitter? Do you do posting?
I've been known to tweet from time to time.
So when you go to a restaurant and you like some beer or you like some wine or you have a big burger you like, do you share that with your friends?
I try not to endorse commercial establishments that I'm ashamed of sponsoring with my business, but I do food porn on Instagram. Does that count?
It does, absolutely. Okay. My son is 15, and he's like, "Mom, there is such a thing as food porn." So I'm like, "Okay, thanks, thanks for getting me hip." Well, there's different levels of what Facebook has out there. There's 1 billion users, so everybody is having some kind of time consumption, posting something. There's no monetary exchange for that. So tell me where the value is, where they're selling companies right now utilizing your time. I mean, that's a very important thing for us to pay attention to, is what happens to the economics when you're utilizing your time and you're not putting it towards something that is viable for you and your living. I mean, think about it. We go to work every single day, and every single day we get in exchange our mighty dollar, our whatever currency that we're getting. Right now, most people are spending time on the internet. And it's not tracked or anything. But with digital currency, there's a way to do it as an influencer marketplace, that between time banking, social currency, and influence websites, you can monetize your life through the things that you believe. The reason why I'm sharing that is there are cause-driven events and things that can do good for the world that can pay for your daily routine or daily life.
Well, it seems like you're exploring a whole other area of economics that the mainstream either doesn't pay attention to or deliberately marginalizes. And I want to go back to like the origin of this, that you were organizing festivals, and and I've been to different festivals. I feel like I have to justify or back that up. I've been to Coachella, and I've been to Pork Fest, and crap, I guess that's about it. But I know that there's when you have these Pork Fest is the Porcupine Freedom Festival in New Hampshire, and it's like nothing but agorists, libertarians, like really hardcore libertarians coming together, and they have a thing called Agorist Alley. But even at Coachella or at other events where you have just big groups of people coming together, they're bringing resources, they're bringing value, and they're all exchanging. Every voluntary relationship is an exchange of value, and if just because you can't put a dollar amount on it doesn't mean it's not an economic exchange or a legitimate exchange. And a lot of people when they look at the world today, or they wake up to the nature of the government racket, and they see how the central bank works, and they understand that the Federal Reserve System is a massive ripoff, they often look to, well, we have to have a gold-backed currency, and it has to go back to this, and it's like stepping backwards. And if you just look around you, in your daily life and the kind of interactions that you have, there's so many more exchanges of value that point to a better system. And it's just when you see it in a music festival kind of environment, you see this, really rich and fast-paced, kind of totally different, you refer to it as a gift economy, but it's also, a traditional economy that has elements of that, and of time, and of, reputation capital and social capital, all these other things that you get into. But for people who are looking at this sort of bigger social picture, who have woken up to this, when you say, hey, consider this, what are the lessons to be learned from observing that music festival economic environment?
Well, there's a guy by the name of Edgar Kahn. He was a law professor who went into time banking because of his. Do you know who Edgar is?
No.
Okay, so basically he started time banks. He was originator of what time banks is. In fact, it's just kind of a label because just like crypto and Bitcoin is the name of it, time banks is time banks, but this is a peer-to-peer time sharing.
Okay, well, for time banks, you're talking about like Ithaca hours and mountain hours, right?
Right, correct.
And just if I may clarify or make sure I'm understanding this right, you're talking about time banking in kind of a different concept as well here. You're talking about like two different concepts. If I may, because mountain hours and Ithaca hours are denominated in time, and they're hypothetically or theoretically pegged to the value of 1 hour of unskilled labor, but it's really a credit system, right? You create that money as credit, whereas time banking, you're actually accounting in real time, and you have two different ways of doing this, right? Is that correct?
Right, but remember the convergence of the two models. Remember that, when Mr. Kahn first came out with this, his idea was time for time. And it didn't really have a time measurement of professional time that went into becoming educated or the value of something. Eventually they'll be able to, or will be able to monitor due to technology, the value of true value time credits. And so over time, we'll be able to use that in a global scale where that time gets exchanged. Right now, there's 22 countries that subscribe to time banks, and the marketplace for Airbnb alone is 150,000 people stayed the night in 2013 in people's homes. That wasn't monitored. That wasn't tracked, and it was just said. It was an exchange. But if you look at the quality and the quantity of the exchange, somewhere along the lines, this new economic system will start to emerge. And so what I've been doing is saying festivals are a great starting point. Let's use festivals as a template model, a pilot, to say we have 300,000 people going in one weekend to Electric Daisy Carnival, or 70,000+ going to Burning Man, that each person going there registers as an active participant. Their time, they're all building an entire ecosystem within itself. They're funding their own self and art projects. They're creating a format of fundraising. They're doing it on crowdfunding and crowdsourcing. So you can see the systems of engagement are starting to mount up, that eventually a global marketplace will start to take place. And so if you think about what that looks like, you can think about, the digital age and the digital currency of Bitcoin and Litecoin and some of these other alternatives, how that will start to have true value currency as well. So it's a lot to bite off in one sitting.
Yeah, no kidding. No, well, I want to ask one more really specific question, and I know it's kind of an impossible one to answer. And I know that in all of these various alternative systems, a lot of them are really either completely off the record or they're now hyper digitalized, right? So even some kind of time currency, or time banking or any kind of barter system, or just you talk about the reputation capital or social capital. We're talking about how many Facebook likes or Twitter followers do you have, and all those things are totally digitized now. But that's a distinctly different concept from cryptocurrency. So the question I'm going to ask, that's kind of an impossible question, is which do you think is going to be more relevant in the future of the global economy? Digital cryptocurrencies that are basically proxies for conventional money. They work as a very conventional, straightforward accounting ledger system, or some of these more innovative systems that are using different means of accounting than really a straightforward, universal, convertible, numerical, money-based system.
So the trends are pointing to cryptocurrencies. And as the cryptocurrencies start to emerge and start to be valued more on a on a basic foundation where my mom understands it, then this convergence of time will start to play a factor, because right now at Lucidity Festival, I can purchase my ticket with Bitcoin, and in exchange on site, an application can be had that my time is valued with that Bitcoin for exchange of service. So if you think about it, it's already happening, how the convergence of the two work together. I mean, you pay for human capital out of your own. You have to pay labor. Right now, if you're working at a grocery store, they have to pay for your Social Security. They have to pay for your taxes. They have to pay for, not your taxes, for your healthcare. I wish. But they have to pay you for your labor. Why not have time calculated as a cost of doing business? Think about it. You could actually have a new monetary system based on doing social good campaigning and people donating their time through philanthropy or any other outlet that is for the people and for local government agencies. It just needs to be established.
Well, the vessel is there. The technology is here. It's just a matter of people like you pointing the way and all the creative entrepreneurs to fill it in. Brandy, where can people find out more about your work?
Right now, you can go over to brandyvale.com. I also write a blog called Who We Truly Are, some insights and some tactical ways to start your own time banking system. And I'm speaking this weekend at Lucidity Festival, so you can go into Lucidity Festival and learn more about sustainability and festivals.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Brandy Vale. All right, we've got just 10 minutes left. Let's see. Do we have anybody who would like to join us on Skype? Oh, Robert Kane is calling back. We lost him earlier. Robert, are you there? What happened? All right, we're going to get Robert back here. Mr. Kane, are you with us? All right. Hey, Jeffrey, can you take us back to shot one here? We're going to wrap this up with one more important story, because I really want to cover this, because this is a real kind of hot button issue that has a lot. I think a lot of people in our audience would appreciate hearing a different perspective on, and that's the whole debate about the gender pay gap right now. And it's very important to us here at Adam versus the Man, because we have a very underpaid woman in the room, although we're working on addressing that issue as soon as we possibly can. So the top headline today from New York Times is Obama spotlights gender gap in wages. His own payroll draws scrutiny. President Obama on Tuesday will call attention to what he has said is an embarrassment in America, the fact that women make on average only 77 cents for every dollar that a man earns. That's embarrassing. But critics of the administration are eager to turn the tables and note that Mr. Obama's White House fares only slightly better. A study released in January showed that female White House staff members make an average 88 cents for every dollar a male staff member earns. Yeah, geez, America, this is an embarrassment. How dare you only pay women 77 cents on the dollar to men? You should be paying them at least 88 cents on the dollar compared to men. And I loved seeing this clip from CNN. Even John King, mainstream statist ass kisser that he is, came out at the very beginning of the segment, said, well, this is a clear-cut case of do as I say, not as I do. And a lot of people, hear this, and it's not an illegitimate issue. It's not illegitimate data. It's really important to look at and to consider these things and to think, well, why do women get paid less? And it deserves to be properly examined. And yes, absolutely, there are issues with fairness. But when we fall back on how do we address this problem non-violently, non-coercively, without seeking a government solution, the answer is to only support businesses that are engaging in practices that you believe in. And if you think that someone is really disrespecting women, like if you really care about equal pay for women, you shouldn't be shopping at any business that pays their women less, or paying taxes to any government that pays their women less, perhaps. But there's another story that I saw today from the Wall Street Journal. More moms staying home, reversing decades-long decline. The share of mothers who stay home with their children has steadily risen over the last several years. In 2012, 29% of all mothers with children under 18 stayed at home, a figure that has risen steadily since '99 when 23% of mothers were stay at home. The share has been dropping since 1967 when it was about half, 50%. Oh, back in the good old days, right? Well, there's a real problem with how we got to this point. And I'm not going to tell you, hey, well, women should make this percent of what men do in general overall, or what anybody should make or be paid. And I'm not going to tell you whether or not a woman who's a mother should stay home or not. I mean, certainly that's that's a very personal choice. But I think there are some broader principles that this issue illuminates that are very important to understanding value, understanding male-female relationships, and understanding why is a political issue. This is, well, pretty much nothing but propagandistic bullshit. The Obama administration goes, oh, they're getting paid less than men. We need to, we'll be the champions of women. Yeah, we'll be the ones looking out for them when no one else can. And this actually gets to why there are, less women than men in the libertarian movement, same as less minorities, because those are groups that the government has really targeted because they have been historically disadvantaged because of racism and sexism and discrimination. They have been disadvantaged, and so the government has stepped in and said, yeah, we're going to take care of you. We're going to protect you. We're going to steal from the rich to give to the poor, and it just so happens that you're among the poor, and we're going to take care of you. And when you're targeted for that, it's much harder for you to accept this idea that, well, geez, maybe if I'm not a beneficiary of the violent protection racket of government, maybe my life will be better off because we don't have to deal with this violent protection racket. But the problem here is that this is such a materialistic way of looking at things. And I mean that from not in any way to abandon the capitalist credo to which I subscribe, but in a way to be even more true to it and to point out that there is a problem that results from the fiat currency racket that most governments are running today. But in the United States, with the Federal Reserve System, when the government says, we're printing money, you have to use it, this is what's of value. If you can't put it in dollar terms and bring it into this official sanctioned economy, it's not of real value. What you're basically doing then, by accepting that idea, is disempowering or devaluing everything that can't be enumerated in dollars. Now, I'm not going to get too much into the weeds on, the intricacies of marriage and family life and agreeing to have a child with someone and all of the significance that entails. However, I will point out that one of two of the things that are not valued in terms of dollars are that women are uniquely capable of are having children and satisfying men, and we don't put those in dollar terms. Instead, women are disadvantaged because we don't value those things. So if women are so much more economically capable than men, I mean, think about this for a second. We in having this conversation, tend to fall back on, well, men are more physically capable than women, and women have to stay at home to raise kids and have children, and so of course they're going to earn less and they're going to have less education. And actually, that's not true in higher education in America anymore, and in a lot of other ways. They're not going to have the earning potential and so on. And it's one of the interesting side effects of, or just great effects of technology, is that men's physical advantage becomes less relevant to productivity as more technology allows us to, have machines that do the physical work for us. But you take all that out of the equation, men still, despite all of this great new technology, can't make more people. And if humans are the ultimate capital, if the individual human being is the ultimate capital resource, then the creation of that has to be the most valuable and most powerful economic thing possible. And if you think about it, historically, men have been working for women. Overall, yes, I know men dominate and are violent and oppress and lots of things, but if you look at sort of like the raw, if you want to put this in the materialistic terms, men have been working for women more than the other way around. Now, I would say that, if anything, it's really the other way around when you account for true value. Women have provided men more value than the other way around over the course of human history. But in order to do that, you have to get past this, well, materialistic way of looking at things that the White House has seemed to adopt. And it's funny to hear bleeding heart liberals who just want everything to be fair and want everybody to be taken care of. All of a sudden, holy crap, we all have to have the exact same amount of stuff. We all have to get paid the same. We have to have equality. But in this one particularly narrow field where it happens to serve the Obama administration's propaganda purposes of distracting people from the real racket that's going on, well, it's really behind this issue coming up these days. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning into the Adam versus the Man podcast. Oh shit, we don't have a joke today. Jeffrey, give me a good libertarian joke. Oh man.
I don't know.
You don't know? I wasn't prepared for this. I actually, prepared for stories and guests. Sierra, tell me a good libertarian joke. Are we really coming to this at the end of the show? How about a marijuana joke? We had some pot stories today. That's way easier. I knew a lot of really good marijuana jokes, but I forgot them all. Cool, huh?